We want to make this as open and permissionless and democratic as possible. The lockup is effectively as long as you want. And you could say, I'm going to lock, this set of XRP for some indefinite amount of time. You can claim the XRP back at any time.
This content is brought to you by BitGo, which is one of the top crypto custodians in the crypto industry. BitGo works with many big companies and brands, such as Pantera Capital, Bitstamp, and Bitcoin IRA. Nike also selected BitGo to power its wallets for its NFTs. And BitGo has many great services, such as hot wallets, custodial wallets, self-managed cold wallets, and NFT wallets. Many institutions trust BitGo with its top-level security and incredible services, such as being able to deploy your capital while it's in custody, which includes lending, borrowing, trading, staking, DeFi access, and more. If you'd like to learn more about BitGo, please visit bitgo.com, link in the description. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and my guest today is Warren Anderson, who is the co-founder of Exocore. Warren, great to have you on.
Always good to be on, Tony.
Warren, we spoke, I think maybe 3 months ago, and we did a deep dive into Exocore and all the great things you guys are doing. Yesterday, it was announced that you're enabling XRP staking, which is really big, and a lot of people want to learn about this. And of course, you worked at Ripple back in the day, which is pretty cool. But for those who may not know, give us a quick overview of Exocore.
Yeah, sure. I remember when you were asking, if there's any important announcements that will be coming up that may be tailored to your audience to ping you. So I did. So we're excited obviously thrilled to support XRP as it's the first time that XRP will have staking yield, which is really cool. Exocore was architected as a layer one blockchain, and it effectively sits, you could say, like on top of or next to other layer ones. And Exocore writes into the layer ones to lock, unlock, and slash. And Exocore kind of serves as like the accounting system for calculating all the rewards, the distribution, the slashing conditions, and that has all implemented in the Exocore layer one. So it's effectively protocolized. So you can think of it almost like an external staking or restaking service. Now, we kind of got started early 2023, spent a lot of time on the architecture. We wanted, obviously I worked on XRP Ledger as layer one. My co-founder, RJ Lon, was the former CTO and co-founder of Harmony. And then my third co-founder is Raluca Popa, who's a professor at UC Berkeley in cryptography and security. So we really wanted to architect this thing to be good stewards of other layer one networks because we built them ourselves. So the XRP or any asset, it stays on the XRP ledger. Users can stake it as if it's like a native feature of the XRP ledger. And we make sure there's no bridging onto Exocore. There's no minting. There's no wrapping. So it's not wrapped XRP. This is native XRP, which is really cool. And we don't have to actually make any changes on the Exocore protocol itself. So we've announced we're supporting BTC. We're also supporting ETH. We're supporting Sol. So naturally, XRP was like the next great token to support if you kind of go down the list. So, but yeah, I'll pause there.
So I'm going to ask newbie questions, right? XRP, Bitcoin, and so forth are not proof of stake blockchains, obviously. How does the staking component work? Where does the yield come from?
Sure. So if you're familiar with a lot of this started with Eigenlayer, who was the kind of the pioneer of restaking, starting to be able to restake ETH, which obviously ETH is a proof of stake network. The ability to restake it is effectively being able to like stake it again to secure what we call off-chain services or services that are running not directly, with the L1 validation logic. So these are naturally like services like oracles, bridges. There's a new case of a lot of like AI use cases or cryptographic networks. And so effectively what happens is, and I like to use analogies. So like if you look back in the internet history, history of the internet, early days, you had to kind of spin up your own TCP/IP network. Like they had Aloha network, they had DARPA network, they had lots of different networks. You almost had to like bootstrap your own network in order to connect with other networks. And then, all of a sudden, everyone kind of consolidated on the TCP/IP, kind of what we use today. And then you would connect by having effectively servers in a data center. So this is like the Facebook era where Facebook used to have to run to, Sunnyvale to their data center there and literally install servers. And I had a friend on the team who made a ton of money doing this, and literally his job all day was just installing servers, listening to like heavy metal, and that was like how they scaled their network. Then, the virtual kind of cloud era came where you could just spin up a virtual cloud server on AWS or Azure or any of these or GCP and literally just click a box where you want to deploy your server set and then it just goes. So we feel like blockchain is in that first era, kind of migrating to the second era, or is it kind of starting in the second era where we have to like bootstrap these blockchain networks, do a lot of infrastructure build just to make them connect. And then, it's still a pretty burdensome experience for most developers. Or if you want to like build on Ethereum, it's just like connect to Ethereum. Maybe it has a little ecosystem around or a big ecosystem around it, but you can't really connect with like easily with like XRP Ledger.
Hmm.
So what we are ushering in is this third kind of wave where we want to support the virtual cloud of decentralized security so that someone can literally just like with an experience like AWS, sign in, say, I want to inherit my decentralized security from, BTC, ETH, and XRP, and here's my wallet address, or even here's my, stable coin or even credit card, and I'm going to pay a fee for that service. And what the service they're actually getting is the actual validation logic from those chains. And so they can run more decentralized services really from scratch at day zero. So they're paying fees. Those fees are going in to contribute to the yield. And so that's where the yield's actually coming from.
Got it. So you mentioned you can do this from your wallet. You don't have to move anything or bridge anything. So which wallets are supported?
That's a good question. We are going to be announcing, different wallets that are supporting the XRP ledger. I think with market activity like this, it's always great because more and more wallets add assets where there's high demand. There's clearly high demand for XRP right now. So we are working with a lot of the major wallets, especially those that offer staking as a service.
Mhm.
We want the experience to be as native to their user experience as possible, and they can just plug in, to Exocore to handle all the logic. So we want to basically abstract away as much of the hoops as possible and make the experience feel as native as possible because everyone knows, having my first time, signing a transaction on XRP Ledger in 2016, 2015 was like, oh my gosh, this is fast as email. It's pretty awesome. So we want to make sure that experience is duplicated through the staking service.
Mhm. So let's do a mock scenario. So let's say I have 5,000 XRP, right, in a wallet. And it's one of the wallets which you're going to announce that supports it. Um, how do I go about enabling this? Like, walk us through that process. And maybe it's too early because you still have to do the whole wallet announcement and so forth. But what would that look like? And is there a lockup, or can I pull in and out at any point?
Yeah, so you basically say you allocate a certain amount of XRP in your wallet. The experience effectively is you look like there'll be a button where you can literally or kind of drop down, select, XRP, and where you want to effectively kind of delegate that XRP to. That feels almost like a deposit, but the actual tokens aren't really leaving your wallet, right? They're just, you're basically just saying, I'm making this commitment to for this amount of XRP. It's going to be subject to earning additional rewards or just rewards for the first time. And then it's also going to be subject to slashing. And what that effectively does, it's going to call to lock that specific set of XRP. So, I was at Ripple and we were working on the XRP ledger to implement things like cryptographic escrow and these other cryptographic conditions. So the only actual requirements for the XRP ledger is to lock, unlock, and slash. And slashing is effectively being able to send the XRP to a black hole address, which every blockchain has. And then slashing itself has like another set of conditions on it where that XRP will be sent to a black hole address based on certain conditions that happen, within the protocol. So effectively, it just feels like a very intuitive experience where this is all happening within your own wallet. We're really excited about this because again, I'm a OG kind of crypto guy, and I, for instance, like have Bitcoin wallets that are, over a decade old, and I haven't
Wow.
touched them in a long time, and I don't want to necessarily. But if I'm going to, I don't want the Bitcoin to leave my wallet, ideally.
Yeah.
I also don't want to require like a lot of trust or counterparty risk, with whatever I'm interacting with. So we wanted to make sure that experience is carried through to every single L1 that we support.
And then when I'm staking, is it kind of like ETH, like where do I need a minimum amount or I could put any amount? And is there like a lockup, like it has to stay there for a certain cycle in order to get the rewards?
So we're not sure yet on the minimum. I mean, there's reserve requirements for instance, like opening an account. Bearing that those reserve requirements are met, we don't think that there will be a minimum. We haven't at least heard a case for the why there should be. We want to make this as open and permissionless and democratic as possible. The lockup is effectively as long as you want. And you could say, I'm going to lock, this set of XRP for some indefinite amount of time. You can claim the XRP back at any time. However, there's what you call an unbonding period. Now, this terminology for people who are only working with XRP ledger is going to be fairly new. This is a very familiar terminology for like ETH and other POS assets. So there may be some education that needs to happen, but you could effectively claim or unlock your XRP, which would include the rewards that you have earned. And there's going to be some unbonding period. We haven't set exactly for the XRP ledger yet. Typically, there's a window between like roughly average around 21 days. The reason for that is there's an attack vector where you could effectively try to spam the network and do something bad and then try to pull your funds out quickly, right? It's like a hit and run. You want to prevent the hit and run from happening. And the one way to do that is to have a longer unbonding period. And so there's details on that which we're still trying to figure out. But it's a pretty fair system. It's also, like we said, we try to make it as trustless as possible, minimize what they call trust assumptions, make it obviously open, permissionless, and decentralized and self-custodied, of course.
Mm. And this may be a tough question to answer, but what are you guys thinking the potential yield or returns might be as far as percentage wise? And once again, maybe too early to answer this.
It's a bit too early, but I'll say anything non-zero is an additive to what XRP holders are earning currently,
Mm.
which is zero. again, I've been an XRP holder, big holder for a long time. I'm sort of building this for myself
Hmm.
because I have XRP and I want that X and I hold. I'm a long-term holder, and sometimes hard, but I hold. So I want my XRP to work for me effectively, right? And I want to just kind of set it and forget it and open my wallet one day and be like, oh wow, I earned, X amount, in rewards. That's like a simple request as a user. So we're in a position where we can enable that for other XRP holders, and we think that's pretty awesome.
Talk to us about security. You mentioned like the funds, the tokens are not leaving your wallet, but w- are there any risks here? Because I'm sure people are going to ask about that.
Yep. So for every reward, right, upside, there's also downside risk.
Mm.
So what the equation here is you're effectively opting into receiving rewards based on the amount of XRP that you stake. And the downside is that XRP could be subject to what they call slashing. So slashing happens if there's some violation of the underlying protocol. In this case, the violation would be if a service that's consuming that decentralized security or the economic security that you're providing somehow makes there's an issue, there's a bug in their code, they miss a block on their validation or something happens. They double sign. There's a whole set of conditions. If any of those are violated, then that XRP that you've staked to those operators, and again, by the way, you have total control of where you want your staked XRP to secure. So you can choose from a list of services. There is some risk modeling that some third parties are doing and how to actually assess the risk of these services. There's lots of different variables. But we do anticipate, that there's going to obviously be, risk in the system. That's why there's reward. There's a few things that we do as a protocol. One, we use something called secure signers. So these are effectively systems that are running in trusted execution environments or TEEs. It's effectively like effectively like a box that allows for more trustless cryptographic kind of security around minimizing the amount of errors that can happen. So like obviously code is like inputs and outputs. It effectively validates the inputs so that the outputs are also fair and valid, and that minimizes a lot of the risk of slashing. This has become a standard in a lot of staking services, especially restaking, and so we're opting or adopting that standard. But these are things that we always think about. The industry around restaking and staking of new assets is actually pretty new. So we're kind of pushing forward and being very security first, about the thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that there's going to be a rating system for some of these protocols. So I'm assuming you guys will help provide that information as well, and where people can view, okay, this is less risky, this is high risk, and things like that.
Yeah, we won't provide the information. The information will be provided like by third parties.
Okay.
There's a couple third parties that are working on some dashboarding already, which kind of helps to for users to kind of think about how, where their staked assets should be secured. Again, you're not sending the staked assets to these people. You're not like they're not going to run away with your funds. The great thing about the security model here is worst case scenario. If there's a slashing where some percentage of your funds would be lost due to that slashing, or even worst case scenario, you have to kind of think about worst case scenarios. The Exocore network, which is a decentralized network running with Tendermint consensus, dozens of nodes. If it gets compromised in any form, the worst thing that can happen is the funds are either your funds or like users' funds are either burnt or they're sent back to the user. So unless they're like the Joker, with like the meme of like just to send a message with the money burning in the background, it's not a profitable attack vector
Mm.
for hackers, because they can only either burn the money or send it back to the user. They can't actually send it back to themselves. And the reason for that is there's actually preconditions that are set into the wallet where they can only the the funds can only go either to a black hole address, which is predefined, or back to the user.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, and you mentioned like the wallet announcement's going to come soon. So when do you think ETA folks may be able to, get this started?
Soon, TM. We
Um,
definitely we want to take advantage, of a lot of the market activity. There's clearly a lot of XRPs in the spotlight. We're working very hard to get as much done as possible, and we're excited. I'm more excited, about supporting XRP just because it's obviously such a great community, the XRP Army. And I'd say that I've even noticed in this new cycle that there's a lot of praise being given from people that don't usually give praise to the XRP community. But it's a strong, large, dedicated community that's finally getting rewarded for its patience. And so we hope to add up to or add an additional amount of rewards to that patience.
yeah, so I mean, XRP's been ripping. It's pretty amazing. Are you surprised to see what's happening? And to your point, there's a lot of praise, but a lot of people are kind of in shock. Like, wait, XRP is ripping like crazy. It's over $2. Now it's at $2.80. What are your thoughts when you saw the price action?
I wasn't surprised given all of the series of activity, mostly regulatory and political.
Hmm.
I'd like to say that, Ripple or XRP shipped some new feature and like this whole thing's like being driven by the promise and technology of the XRP ledger, which I think is great. But this is purely like driven by the removal of the regulatory overhang that Ripple has been subjected to. I was in the office when we got the message, about the SEC regulatory action in December 2020. So I felt that impact very viscerally. And so it's been a long time. I think, XRP missed to a large part missed the last market cycle. And this is directly related to the regulatory actions brought by the SEC, which Ripple was able to successfully defend in court. So it's not like that Ripple got lucky and this happened, but it actually defended itself in a hostile environment with a hostile political administration. And I think that's commendable. And I think that's why this time it's a little different. You see even the most ardent XRP skeptics and Ripple skeptics are kind of tipping their hat because, Stu and Brad and Chris, they all went to bat. And Stu's got an incredible legal team. He doesn't probably praise them enough, but I know a lot of them personally, and it's just like a crack team. And they did a lot of work and spent a lot of resources to defend themselves. And I think the now is the fruit of the labor that's happening. So yeah, I'm very excited, and I hope everyone else is.
Yeah, it's exciting times, and we're seeing a lot of institutions are filing for XRP spot ETFs. I was surprised by that. Grayscale relaunched your XRP Trust, and seeing a lot of the trading volume come from institutions as well. I think the folks at Falcon X just tweeted out about that. And then it sounds like RLUSD, the stable coins, are right around the corner. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, I think what was actually more surprising is that XRP held on as, a top 10.
Yeah.
It got for a while there, it started looking like it may drop out of the top 10. I don't think it ever did, but I think that's more surprising to the market, to even to the skeptics, that XRP was able to hold on for so long, given all the scrutiny. I don't think I don't think most assets would be able to do that. And this is a testament to this, XRP community. Without that strong community, global community, I don't think, XRP would be where it is today.
Yeah, that's a great point. I often remind people of that. This asset got delisted on so many exchanges in the United States, and yet it stayed in the top 10.
So I tweeted this out earlier. I feel like XRP and Ripple are like the Trumps of crypto. They have been litigated, attacked, um, you know, basically like tried to be like effectively killed off, right, by some very powerful forces and fought like hell, stayed relevant, stayed in the game, continued to push, and won in court. And the now the Court of Public Appeal is rewarding it. So I feel like there's a lot of parallels between between XRP and Donald Trump. Not to get political, but I mean it's also polarizing.
Yeah.
It's a very polarizing. There's a lot of haters out there. There's
Yeah.
also a lot of true believers. It appeals to a mainstream audience. I could go on and on, but it's like I think the parallels should be called out, and the fact that they're both winning right now is interesting.
Warren, do you have an XRP price prediction that you can share?
Uh, no, I don't. I don't even. I mean, I don't ever do these price predictions because
Okay.
every time I have a number in my head, I feel like 'cause I've been in Bitcoin since 2011. Like I had a number in my head, it hit that number faster than I even thought possible.
Wow.
So as wild as it sounds, like I am actually probably underestimating. But I don't want to say that because and what that underestimation is, but yeah, I'm long term very bullish on this space in general, and obviously like a big XRP holder, so I'm a believer.
Do you think this rally continues into 2025? I know it's kind of the 4 year cycle is playing out again. And do you think this continues deep into 2025 for the
I
entire
do.
market?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think that the 4 year cycle is happening again, which is interesting. People say this time is different. With like their question like, where's the retail volume going to come from? I think this is the cycle where we actually do see institutional adoption, like in the form that everyone thought and not even like thought possible. I mean, we've already seen sovereign, wealth with countries actually buying it with El Salvador. Um, I definitely see that that is going to become a trend. El Salvador was very prescient in buying also at the low end of the market. And so they're going to come out looking very good with some of their treasury management. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if the U.S. government started seriously buying at least Bitcoin to a supplemental asset to its reserves. It even if it's a small percentage, it kind of makes sense. And I think would be like very actually prudent by the government to do that. And if that's the case, then like you're talking like the largest institute and one of the largest institutions on the planet. I think
Mhm.
the largest institution on the planet by sheer number of people working for it. I think it's like 3 million. So yeah, it's going to be insane. I think it could be like the cycle to make all cycles.
Yeah, I mean, you have the convergence of so many different industries or factions of society, TradFi, politics. It's pretty amazing to watch this happening. Obviously, retail has been here for a while, but yeah, this time I know this is the cliche statement that is different, but it is different. I mean, you got presidential candidates that were campaigning on crypto We got the most pro crypto Congress coming into office, obviously a pro crypto president, and then Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. I mean, this is unprecedented. We haven't seen anything like this before.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to like I think the industry. I by the way tweeted this out in like March of 2023. I said I think we're all going to be surprised at the number of single issue crypto voters that come out in this election and basically saying like don't touch my crypto. And in some ways, I think that happened. You know, people are saying like, oh, the mail vote was unprecedented, kind of coming out. I think a part of that was that those male voters also own crypto. And it's like it's become such a strong, so there's materially so many crypto holders that I think that, and I don't know the numbers in this, but it may be I think it's surpassed the number of like gun owners or like roughly in that ballpark, which you know the NRA is traditionally like a very powerful political organization.
Yeah.
But the crypto industry in general, I would say is more modern, more digitally native. You know, I think arguably like more technically astute, and also can mobilize very quickly. So those factors make it basically a political train you do not want to get in front of. And I do think, you know, the Democratic Party parked itself right in front or waged kind of war with the wrong group. The numbers make up for it. Like, I think there's over roughly around 300 million that was raised by through political action committees or PACs and other kind of direct campaign donations, which dwarfed the Wall Street, which dwarfed pharma, which dwarfed oil and gas. We're talking the largest industries on the planet, and
Yeah.
crypto came out swinging strong. So I think, regardless of the politics, crypto has demonstrated its staying power uh, through political action, and has also realized like, hey, if you fund these political action committees and you're very thoughtful and strategic about it, you can actually have really good outcomes that are favorable to the industry. It's funny because it took over 12, 13, 14 years for the industry to figure this out.
Yeah.
I think other industries have figured it out long before, but I think it's also just like crypto is naturally a very libertarian kind of like not anarchist, but like kind of libertarian. Like we don't really want to like engage like with government directly, but I think it got to the point where like we needed regulatory clarity, and the only way to do it is to directly get involved and get the hands dirty. So that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, and there was just this outright attack on the industry, right? Like almost trying to kill it. And I mean, you have obviously Elizabeth Warren is the head of the snake, and she was campaigning on this. I'm building the anti-crypto army, and I'm personally oh my gosh, I'm losing my train of thought here, an independent, and watching this play out, Donald Trump and the Republicans did the chess move like, oh, you're going to go against a neutral technology and make it a political issue? You're going to use it against you, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and I'm also like kind of right in the middle, independent. So I feel like everyone was trying to sell us. It's like the independent male voters, I guess, were the ones that were targeting. So I was kind of seeing things from both sides. I live in the Bay Area, was obviously in California, which is obviously a very blue state. But I had predicted to a lot of friends, I based on how things were going and just the sentiment in the state of California, in the Bay Area, and in the country at large, I felt like there's going to be a kind of a pendulum. The pendulum has shifted a little bit too much to the left,
Right.
and it was going to start swinging back. And that's what you saw. Even the San Francisco Bay Area, went more moderate with the mayor. Um, um, Jeff Lurie, and being elected kind of as a kind of wild card, and then also the board of supervisors who are more conservative and actually have like founder credibility. So and then California kind of everything kind of swung a little bit more to the right. And I think that's just a natural process of like the democratic system, which is super healthy. And I think that should be celebrated. Uh, you know, for the people saying, far left, far right, if you're either on one of those camps, everything looks far.
Yes.
So, like, because guys like us were kind of independently minded and kind of in the middle, we see all like it's a little pretty silly, I think, frankly. I don't think my political ideas have changed much over the last like 20 years, but maybe I'm crazy.
No, yeah, and I think it goes back to well, I guess the extremism on both sides goes back to economic reasons because I think I remember who was saying this. I think Raoul Pal. He was saying politics is downstream of economics, and people are feeling left behind. They're feeling screwed in different ways, and in fact, a lot of the left and the right, the underlying root issue, they're both frustrated with government. They actually have something in common. There might be issues here and there they disagree on, but the underlying problem that has them so polarized is they feel, hey, 2008, we're screwed. What is happening? Inflation. And they don't understand the underlying problem of the inflation, money printing, and debasement of currency. And crypto is an avenue out of that with DeFi and the ability to uh, be your own bank, so to speak, in many different ways and reducing the cost of moving money and all that and opening up new monetization opportunities for people. So it's interesting what's happening, and maybe that's why a lot of people are gravitating to crypto as well.
Yeah, I think so. And kind of going back, like there was one political polling. I think is like kind of garbage. I think this election kind of finally proved that out. Obviously, Poly Market was interesting, but there's one poll called it's a Gallup poll, and it has successfully predicted every single presidential election except for two or three since 1948. So it has an 85% accuracy, which is insane for a poll. And it's very simple. They ask one question or two questions. First question is, what are the single two largest issues facing the country today? And they say it's like economic issues and social issues. This year, those two issues were the economy and immigration. And then the second question is which party is more or better suited to address these issues? And the Republican Party, since I think, springtime or midsummer, was up by 5%. Ironically, like that's roughly, what the gap was. And so this Gallup poll was spot on, like again, so the answer was kind of there. I think for like especially like the Democrats to see like immigration and the economy. And ultimately, I think the Trump campaign just did a better job of speaking to those issues. And I think I don't know, that's what happened.
Yeah, for sure. Um, It's fascinating. I'm really excited to see what happens in 2025. Trump gets into office, the most pro-crypto Congress ever. We got some legislation up to go through the Senate, like the Fit 21 and possibly stablecoin legislation. You get the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Bill. So 2025 is going to be a really fascinating year. And then, I'm expecting ETF inflows to increase and then more ETFs like XRP ETF and others to be approved. So it's going to be exciting.
Definitely. I think you said it earlier. Like it's pretty amazing that we had a presidential race where crypto was a a base issue, or at least for it. It wasn't, I think, an issue that the American public declared it was an issue. Excuse me, but I think it was a hidden issue that really kind of swung the vote. And now we get to see kind of what happens as a result. Obviously, there's like basically 18 months of where the Republican Party having kind of controlled the Senate, the House, and the executive branch and the Supreme Court will kind of do a blitz. I think it's going to be very interesting to see Doge, the new government entity, the temporary new government entity, kind of do some work. on effectively refactoring the U.S. government. I think that's going to be exciting to watch too. Yeah, it's like I'm bullish, but it is amazing, pinch me kind of feeling that we're in this position where like just compare it to last election and crypto wasn't even like anything. So we definitely had to scream at the top of the mountain to make sure it became an issue, which I think was successful.
I'm just thinking about, I was laughing about Doge because Elon. Of course, the acronym is Doge.
That's right. Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Warren, great chatting with you, man, and excited for the wallet news to come out about which wallets will support the XRP staking, and excited to try this out. So thank you for joining me, and we'll probably have to have you back on once things are up and running and you guys are, you know, hitting the ground running here. But thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tony.